Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to another Severance special. There's a lot to discuss this week, and while episode 5 might seem like a chill, normal episode, I'm here to tell you there are many secrets. I'm currently working on a special Everything You Missed video for this episode, so if that interests you, make sure to stay tuned. But this video, however, is dedicated to the ortho procedure. I've gathered a ton of compelling evidence to determine whether Woe's Hollow is a real place or not, and we're going to go through all of it. But I need you to make the final decision in the comments. I'll give you my personal verdict, but let's just say I'd really love for the audience to lean a certain way. Before we begin, if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for your incredible support. I'm beyond grateful, seriously. And if this is your first time here, subscribe, like, and don't be shy. Share your thoughts on episode 5 in the comments so we can keep the discussion going. Alright, let's get started. Okay, before we dive in, let's acknowledge two things. Lumon loves in-house design. From O&D objects to doors to all the weird tech that they use, it's all custom made.
And then Lumon.
Yes.
And they make their doors in-house. It's fucking hubris.
Lumon is already doing shady things underground without the outside world knowing about it. Something like the GOAT department. Let's talk about how they end up in Woe's Hollow. As you know, each of them quote-unquote spawns in different locations. Does it sound familiar? Well, it should. That's because Lumon staggers their entrances. Now, the counter-argument is that they appear in different places so they don't meet on the outside. And while that does make some sense, do you really think that a bunch of normal employees have the knowledge to figure out such precise routes without a supervisor? Especially on the outside world? I mean, I could understand the argument for someone like Irving, but the rest of them, not really. After they spawn, we see them on a hill with the same tray that Mr. Melchick always uses for melon bars, egg bars, and of course the music dance experience, but this time the tray holds a monitor, a console, and a remote. We've seen this exact same setup before, and I'm going to show you a clip of it in Season 1, Episode 4, which is the first time that Helly attempts a resignation. Please pay careful attention to how the TV and the devices are all plugged in. Here's where things get weird. The monitor is operated outside. Why is that odd? Well, you might say it's just a sci-fi show, relax, but let's go back to Episode 7 of Season 1. Nothing in this show is random. If they show us a plug, best believe it means something. And speaking of plugs, it's not just a TV or console. You know what else requires a plug? The theremin. The very instrument Miss Huang is desperate to play. She does it once in episode 4, but never in episode 5.
I thought I was going to perform,
Yes, well, I feel the theremin works best in moderation.
but I
You
practiced.
can play your piece for me later. Yes?
At first, that seems insignificant, but after Irving's funeral and that whole debacle about the theremin, I'm convinced that this is a huge hint that Woe's Hollow is inside Lumon. Still not convinced? Well, that's completely okay. I started with the weaker arguments first. If you enjoy this kind of nerding out, like and subscribe. You won't regret it, believe me. Now let's talk operations. So far we're aware of a few operations, one of them being overtime contingency, the other being employee transfer, and finally Glasgow block. OTC was the highlight of Season 1's climax. I've already done a deep dive on employee transfer from Season 2 Episode 1, so make sure to check it out. But Glasgow block, well, we kind of have no idea what it is, or at least we didn't.
It's Milchick. Remove the Glasgow block now. No!
Turns out, Glasgow block actually appears in Season 1. If you missed it, here's a quick shot of the screen showing different operations. And let me tell you, every single one of them sounds absolutely wild. But here's what Glasgow block does. It prevents the severance procedure from triggering. No ding, no clean slate, no nothing. Why does this matter? Well, if they were outside, removing the Glasgow block wouldn't change anything. Helena Eagen would still be Helena Eagen. She wouldn't suddenly become Helly R. But inside a severed space, well, removing the block means Helly returns, confirming that Woe's Hollow is inside Lumon. or else they would be using the OTC. Now let's throw in a curveball. Some people say Mr. Melchick using a walkie-talkie means they're on company grounds, but that's not necessarily true. He also used the same device to wake up Dylan at home. So let's move on to the weather.
That's fine too.
Daddy! Daddy!
What the fuck?
We told you to count to 1,000 and wait outside.
Is that my kid?
End it.
Again, I'm just presenting the evidence. I don't want you to be swayed a certain way, but I do want you to make a decision in the end knowing all the facts. And one of the more interesting facts is the weather. So I need you to pay attention to how the moon and sun appear in Wolves Hollow. First of all, they seem off. Stiff, programmable, and timed. Yes, Severance is a sci-fi TV show, but they haven't messed with the weather before. This show is about the procedure, not time warping or artificial weather, and yet the sky is a huge focus. Gwendolyn Y first mentions it in Season 2, Episode 1.
She said my Audi excels at stargazing. Meant a great deal to me.
The goat guy brings it up through stargazing, and Mr. Melchick plays the friendly act with this whole experience. This is not their first time trying this exercise, and I do have some evidence to back that up. We'll get there in a minute, but before we close out this section, just want to point out a couple things. Irving loses his fire and his light. He falls asleep outside and wakes up unharmed by frostbite. Now, I saw some comments saying that it's because the luxurious clothing of Lumon, but come on, I need you to be realistic. Look at the weather, look at the cold, look at the snow. No one is making it through the night without at least some damage. Now, Irving says that he almost froze to death, but he looks so unfazed and unharmed. Well, that's true unless they're actually on the inside of Lumon and the cold is controlled, which makes more sense. Because is Melchick really allowed to endanger Helena's life outside? Or is this just an in-house sleepover at Lumon? Given Melchick's authority, my money's on the second one. You remember Petey's map from Season 1? Well, there's a ton of wild details here. One specific note says team building. Does it sound familiar? Well, not only is Orthbo advertised as a team-building exercise, but even Apple TV's episode description calls it that. Now to everyone's favorite bit. Does Orthbo equal robots? Well, I've done a full video on who these robots might be and why they exist, so go watch it if you still haven't seen it. It's a very important video. But what I want to add to that previous video is that every robot points in the same direction. Enough people pointing in the same direction, well, you get a circle, a square, but whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter because it's a closed space. Milchick constantly warns them not to stray from the path. Why? What happens if they reach the edge? Honestly, with all that being said, my final verdict is that Wolves Hollow is not a real place. And here's one final mind-blowing bit. I think that they've been here before, especially Irving and Bert. I'm assuming that they have no recollection of it. And here's why.
Kier invites you to drink of his water.
Irving.
Felicia said you'd be here. Is it awful to say I don't care for that one?
No. Honestly, it makes me nervous too. Such a lovely vista, but I keep thinking.
He could slip.
That's all I have for this one, folks. So thank you so much for watching, but please before you leave, let me know your thoughts. Is Wolves Hollow a real place, or is it just another in-house Lumon illusion? Drop your theories in the comments, like and subscribe, and make sure to stay tuned for all the Severance special content that is coming out next week. Until then, stay safe, take care, and praise Kier. I'll see you soon.